Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Small Biz Diaries. We're here with Adriana. I can't wait to dive into some of these really important topics. So, I have an expert here, or expert in terms of her journey, right? And what has brought her to this journey. So, Adriana, welcome.
Thank you so much, Esperanza. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, it feels like. So,
Yes.
I'm excited. And with that being said, you have an HR background. So
Yes.
tell me a little bit about that and how that's played a role into your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been in human resources, 11 years now. That's what I declared as my major is human resource management. Went ahead and did my associates, my bachelor's, and then my boss at the time, once I graduated my bachelor's, she's like, Adriana, if you're even having like an inkling to get your master's, I will support you wholeheartedly. Go do it before life gets the best of you. And what she meant by that, you get married, you have kids, or you just get busy, right? And then you're like, oh, I'm going to do it, but you keep on putting it off. So I went ahead, took her advice, and went straight through. I'm still in the HR world for my 9 to 5, but really where my passion lies and really like what sets my soul on fire is my small business of Adriana Dinero, where I do one-on-one money coaching, I do financial literacy education, and it's funny how you kind of talk about this topic as well, or you brought up the topic because something I just started my career with, which was actually an ask from a now client, was if I can do career coaching and pay negotiation for her. Just
Mm,
because she knew I was in the HR world and because we're first gen Latinas, we have no idea how to go ahead and go through that. So she's like, can I hire you as a coach? I know it's not something you offer. Can you go ahead and offer? And I'm like, absolutely. Like, let's go ahead and do this. I'm all for having everyone get as much money as they can that's put on the table. So essentially, it's really all the skills and all of the experience and the knowledge and all of the life things that I've learned in human resources is really trickling into my business as financial literacy education because I have that interesting scope of kind of being on the other side
mm,
and really being able to go ahead and coach my clients or really educate the public to say, hey, this is kind of what happens, or this is the situation you can find yourself in and how you get yourself out. So it's been an interesting journey, and I'm still learning and growing and things like that, balancing between the two worlds. But it's amazing how lived experience and things from before can absolutely transfer over to entrepreneurship.
yeah. And most of the things you talked about, like, are the things that they don't talk about or teach you in school.
Absolutely.
Like, you can take a negotiations class, and some people do have access to that. So that definitely helps to a degree. But at the same time, sometimes there's even like, I mean, you alluded to it, but like cultural barriers or just like things
Hmm.
that you were nurtured through as your during your childhood that, yes, if you take a negotiations class, you might have the backbone or like the foundation. But if there's something else like blocking you or if there's something else impacting you, that's still not going to help you truly advocate for yourself in the way that you should.
Hmm. No, very
And it's
true.
tough. And it's tough, especially because it's a hard ask, right? Like, I would love to have you tell me a little bit about that. Like, what's the hardest part for folks when it comes to advocating for themselves?
It's that mindset, right? Like, and most of my clients are women of color. And when they come in as either like an immigrant themselves or they come in as a first gen, a lot of times we're being told by our elders, if that's our parents, our grandparents, our aunts, our uncles, like, how lucky are you that you're in this position? How lucky are you that you don't have to do back-breaking work? It was always a thing, like, for example, with my dad, he always said, you have one of two options in order to make money in this world. You either use your hands in terms of hard labor, or you use your mind in terms of going out to get an education and using your mind and being in an office. So even, I got a little taste of that. And I get that still to this day because my HR career was mostly in manufacturing and now I'm in distribution, but I still get comments once in a great while on how lucky are you that you are in an office that is air conditioned and you get to sit pretty and you're not going home exhausted. I'm going home exhausted because anyone that knows that works in an office setting, you're using your mind and sometimes like there's no stopping, you're working through lunch or what have you. So we go home exhausted too, but it's the different exhaustion. A lot of times what I see is that women just take the first grab. They take whatever is given to them, not knowing that you can negotiate. I didn't even know you could negotiate until I had my first full-time HR job outside of internships. And I had a gentleman come to me, it was January of the new year, and he's like, Adriana, I'm looking at my PTO time and I negotiated more time. And he's like, it's on my offer letter. So I'm like, hold on. So back then, everything was paper. Had to go look for his file and pulled it out, and I did see that he negotiated. And this was a white man. And that was the first time I've even hearing about that. And I'm like, I'm not going to ask him. I don't feel comfortable asking him, but let me dig into this more. And come to find out that white people, that men, always negotiate something. If it's pay, if it's a sign-on bonus, if it's more PTO time, what have you. And in the 11 years that I have been in human resources, I've only had one woman and no people of color negotiate anything in the time of that conversation. And the thing that I always tell my clients is negotiate something. Even if it's not the money, the vacation time, the work type, insurance to start as of day one. And a lot of people think, well, Adriana, it says in the handbook XYZ. No, you can negotiate things that even say XYZ in the handbook. Everything is negotiable. It's a business deal on both ends. You're giving up X amount of hours to make them successful, and they have to pay you as such.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that just came to mind when you were talking was what you hear growing up of malagradecida, don't
Yes.
be ungrateful.
Yes.
And it's almost just you have people and through different times that they were living, gratitude is what helped push them along. It was very fight or flight survival mode. So you had to be grateful for what you had, but we're living in a different time now. There are, don't get me wrong, so many other stressors and so many other things going on, but we might not have to live in that mindset as much anymore. And obviously still be grateful, but making sure we're speaking up for ourselves and we're trying, at least there's no reason not to try. So having that component of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And very much like you just said, having to try. What I tell everybody is the worst they can say is no. Right? They're never going to pull the offer letter away from you because you're asking for more of something. The worst they're going to say is, sorry, we can't make that work. And you make that decision if you really do want that job or if you want to go ahead and look elsewhere.
Exactly.
Because it's a business deal.
Exactly. And now that you have started your own business and you're in the entrepreneurial world, how do you feel like your experience in HR and in all the things that you've put into practice with your full-time role have helped you as an entrepreneur?
I think the big thing is, for one, really using the knowledge that I have gained, the knowledge and the lived experience to go ahead and empower my clients, because I have a different perspective. I'm on the other side of the table, or kind of in this sort of HR world, right? Which is very different compared to if you work in marketing or finance or accounting or what have you. And then two, the thing that I'm seeing is a lot of times with entrepreneurs, which I completely understand when you first start, they overextend themselves, or they ask people to pay them very, very low. And it's you have to kind of have that talk in the mirror, or you have to do a market value analysis to go ahead and see how much you should be charging. And you should be able to feel comfortable to go ahead and charge that amount. Because what I see many times is they don't charge enough. If it is a cleaning person that's cleaning a house, I've heard very many stories on this one. And I'm lucky to say that I'm part of a circle where we advocate for each other. And there have been times when someone says, I hired somebody to go ahead and clean my house, and she was only charging me X amount of money. And I didn't think that was fair. So I gave her an extra $100, $200 and gave her a little spiel and said, hey, you do an amazing job. You use great products. You are lowballing yourself. So I think it's a lot of that too. Not only the self advocacy, but what are we putting into each other as well in our community? Are we having those honest conversations? Are we saying, yeah, I charge this much for a speaking gig, or yeah, I charge this much for a coaching session, or yes, I charge this much for a consulting fee. I think that's a big part of it too. And also, if you are quote unquote winning in terms of like getting grants or making those connections, I think that there's enough for all of us. So take the people with you, like teach them and mentor them and let them know what you've lived through so they don't have to suffer through it too.
Yeah. The community component is something I feel like we're starting to talk more about. And I think gatekeeping, like, is what another way I've heard this, like,
Yes.
formulated as, is just like not sharing information because you're just wanting to focus on what you're doing and nervous that if someone else finds out, like, you're going to have less clients. And I mean, all the things, but it's so much better and so much more powerful to empower. There's room there. The world is too big.
Yes. Yes.
There's enough room for everybody. So it's just a matter of like empowering each other. And you're right. I can definitely recall a time where could have spoken up and I didn't. So if anybody else that's listening can as well, then it's just a matter of like, okay, maybe we should be saying something and maybe we should be talking about it more. Because yeah, I'm not in the cleaning business, but at the same time, I might know more than that person knows in terms of my experiences with cleaning, with using the cleaning services. So you just never know when it doesn't hurt to say anything. And if anything, you're helping that small business that is really pouring everything they are and they can into the business. So it makes sense.
Yeah. No, and it really does. And as you were talking, I'm even thinking of like, let's say that you have someone bake a cake for you, right? And then you're like, you only charge this much, and I have quoted everybody, and everyone charges double. Like, jack up the price a little bit at least, right? Because that's time consuming. That's a lot of money for supplies, and that's a lot of, blood and sweat that you're going to go ahead and put into this product.
Have you found it easy or hard to like apply the things that you see in HR to yourself and your business? Like, do you feel like you've struggled with that, or because you're empowered with all the knowledge, you're kind of just like, you know what, this is what it is. Like, I just got to go into it. How's that journey been like for you?
First, it takes that mindset, right?
Mhm.
Because you're like, oh my gosh, am I really going to do this? Am I really going to do this entrepreneur journey and whatnot? And then as you start getting used to it, you're like, no, I can do this. And I'm so grateful for the community that I'm a part of because I have someone who's a dear friend and she's a mentor as well. And she's always seen the sparkle in me before I see it. And I think having those people in your corner really do help. So they'll point it out and then you're like, yeah, I can do that. And then you go like, hit the ground running sort of thing. In the beginning was tough, but I'm coming up 3 years, oh my gosh, in like a month and a half, and I can't believe it. And I've seen the growth, not just as an entrepreneur, but as a human being. I can honestly attest to this and say I've become a better person from it.
Yeah. It's crazy how much it does end up impacting not only your business, but you as a person, right? Because we learn so much through an entrepreneurial journey. It makes you really reflect on things or just like brings more things to light. So it does help when you can start applying those things and being mindful of that moving forward. So that way it helps you within the next client conversation or within the next contract negotiation. You just have to continue like building off of that or compounding on that to be able to then feel more comfortable because it is practice, right? Like,
yes.
You're not going to be the best at the beginning, but if you continue trying, it's going to feel easier the next time around. So, yeah, I just think that the coaching process, I'm sure for you, is so rewarding in the sense that you can kind of see that and guide that process for someone else when they're not seeing it for themselves.
Yeah, and many times I find myself reminding people like, do you remember when, in XYZ? And they're like, okay, I did do that. I did do that. And the one thing that I tell all of my clients, no matter what sort of money coaching they want to come with me for, is look, the ultimate goal is that you are doing better today than you were yesterday. I don't care if it's 1%, 10%, 100% better, but as long as you have the due diligence and the effort and the aspiration to be better today, That's all that matters. It's literally an entire journey. And it's an up and down journey. And this is with anything in life, entrepreneurship, being on a financial freedom journey, just life in general, career wise, being a mother, what have you.
Yeah.
It's all up and down. It's not going to be puppy dogs and butterflies all the time, no matter what social media tells you. But you just kind of go ahead, you be kind to yourself, be graceful with yourself and say, okay, I'm doing better today than I was yesterday, and whatever that means.
Yeah. Do you think that within financial literacy education, the educational component is huge for people in the sense of like building their confidence?
It is. It is because a lot of times they've never heard these things before. And it's also making a connection because there's some people in the space who use like the jargon words and stuff and they just lose people. And it's like, no, like you got to kind of come down a little bit. You have to understand that the majority of our country, the majority of our community has never talked about these topics. It's scary, or they come from scarcity or, poverty or what have you. And you have to come across the topic in a meaningful way, but understand how to make that connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like storytelling has a lot to do with that. Telling them, let's say that we're going over debt. And you're like, hey, I was a shopaholic in my 20s. You don't have to stay this way for the rest of your life. And this is the reason why I was shopping, right? If it was depression, if it was sadness, if it was that I had no self-control, or if it was my self-esteem was really, really low. And I thought, all of the new clothes and the purses and the shoes were going to make me feel better, but I still felt crappy. That's something that's personable. That's something that really engages them. And that's really something that maybe someone in that room that you're talking to or in a podcast or what have you says, she went through that too. Or that was the old her. And look where she's at now. So I think really like that connection, that human to human connection, and having the understanding that we all had our own trials and tribulations in the past. And we've overcome them in whatever shape or form that was. And now we're here thriving or what have you. I think that's huge. And I think that really helps with the connection, and it really helps with the trust too.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of people like on social media that do financial literacy, and I'm like, you give me the heebie jeebies, or, you're like, I don't know if I trust you too much. And
Yeah.
it's like you pick whoever you want to go ahead and work with for whatever reason is important to you, whatever values or morals are important to you. But I think it's also not, don't put people down
Mm-hmm.
for what they did. And like I tell all my clients, like, I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to tell you what a horrible person you were or anything like that. As long as you're doing better today than yesterday, that's all I care about.
Yeah.
That's it.
And there's quite honestly, a vulnerability to it. Like you have to be willing to be a little vulnerable in the sense of like admitting, I don't know this and it's okay that I don't know this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to take the next step and empower myself to know this and get a
Mm-hmm.
better understanding so that I can feel more prepared next time. Like there's vulnerability, there's setting your ego aside, like not being so down on yourself, giving yourself
Yes.
that grace and
Yes.
all of those different components that you've mentioned throughout this conversation. Community, really surrounding yourself with people that make you see that spark or like
Mm-hmm.
encourage you to and motivate you to
Mm-hmm.
really start like taking it to the next level or like really build what you can build. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
it takes all of those things. It's almost like putting all those things in a pot, even if it's okay if it's like one by one,
Mm-hmm.
so that way you can feel more confident in that next conversation or whatever it is.
Yeah. No, everything you said is spot on.
Yeah, I mean, I got it from you. Yeah, yeah. There are tidbits people can take away from this, from what I'm hearing, and through your
Yeah.
experience in HR. I mean, that's very people focused, and
Oh my gosh, yes.
that's people advocacy, right? Like, if no one else is advocating for someone in a workspace, that's what HR is supposed to be: is someone that can advocate for them, or
Mm-hmm.
just like be there as a resource to be able to help. So that perspective with entrepreneurship, or like taking the people component and then being able to shift it towards guiding and coaching people through it in terms of what you've learned and the mindsets and the opportunities that come with dealing with all this stuff is just so refreshing to hear about, I think, because you don't as much as we would hope.
Yeah, no, and I see it too. I mean, I go to the conferences, I go to the meetups and stuff, and you see the jadedness like within the industry or within the field, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, no, like I'm gonna be who I am. And I remember at one of my jobs, I was leaving, and you know, it was during my layoff, actually. I was getting laid off, and that's how I started my business. And I told my boss, like, I'm going to start this business. I'm taking a sabbatical. I'm going to see where it goes. Give myself 6 months and see if it's profitable. And if not, worst comes to worst, I just go back to HR. Everyone else has a 9 to 5, so it's a big deal. And when I asked for feedback, what feedback do you have, or what advice, consejos do you have, for this next chapter? She told me, she's like, the only thing that kind of didn't sit well with me, or that I would probably change as you go into the next role, is that you always say because I would have like my own branch along, and then everyone else would have, separate branches. And she's like, you would always say my employees. And she's like, you don't say that. She's like, you don't say that they're your employees. And I had to take a step back, because at that time of my life, I had majority Latinos working in the manufacturing warehouse or factory, whatever you want to call it. And I'm thinking to myself, those are my people. Those are my people. And no one else could advocate for them because no one else spoke the language.
Mm.
And here we are going through this hard time of everyone getting laid off, and we were there for each other. So I still remember that. I didn't take the advice. I still say my employees, or, I'm regional now. So I'll be like, you're my Chicago employee, you're my Philadelphia employee, or you're my New York employee. But it's one of those things of still having empathy and still seeing the human aspect of it, because unfortunately a lot of people don't see that anymore. A lot of people usually just kind of see someone as, how are they going to make me money?
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Like, they have families outside of work, they have lives outside of work, they have things that they go through. I can probably write a whole book on employees who have come to me because they are in a time of crisis and they don't know who else to turn to. If it's, a domestic violence situation, if it is that someone's really, really sick in the family, or someone passed away, or them themselves, I would see them one day happy and cheery, and they come in crying and tell me that now they have cancer. So you really start appreciating life a little bit more, and you appreciate the days that things are okay, because you don't know what can happen tomorrow. Because in my world, you've seen that happen so much. You've seen what maybe someone who is older has worked their entire lives with the intention of
Yeah.
spending their golden years with their partner, and she passes away because of cancer, and now he's lost because he's going to retire next month and he doesn't know what to do with himself.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts putting things into perspective, which is why I also want the entrepreneurship journey, because I'm like, look, I'm going to go ahead, do what makes me happy, feeds my soul, and I can make money out of it. And I can have my community and all the other things that maybe my 9 to 5 doesn't fulfill. And that's completely okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so many other benefits with entrepreneurship, but I always tell people, I'm like, it's such a special journey, and you're part of a special club when you choose the entrepreneurship path. And you just learn so much about yourself, about your community, just about the world around you as well. And I always tell people, like, you're smarter than you think you are. So don't knock yourself down because you're not at this level. We all go through that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I mean, not only just how that evolved for you through your journey, but then also how, I mean, like how much it impacts your journey now, like the journey you had with your 9 to 5, and now how it's impacting your entrepreneurial journey as well. I think
Mhm.
that speaks towards like how many other people probably are going through something similar, in the sense of just like trying to navigate those two worlds, and you're just putting your own perspective into your entrepreneurial journey as well. And that's, I think, why so many people, I'm sure, connect to that, because they're not being advocate, or like they don't have that advocacy, or they never felt that advocacy. So it's almost like, okay, how can I talk to someone that does give me that, or does help me with that? And how can I take that and run with it, because I'm not getting it where I need to get it from, whether
Yeah.
it's like yourself as an entrepreneur, because you just are by like you're working on your own, or you don't have that many people that will help you with that, or because you're in your 9 to 5 and you're not feeling that from where you're at. Yeah, I think that just speaks towards everything we just spoke about, but then only like emphasized with your own journey. I appreciate that.
Of course.
There's a couple questions I ask on every episode that I would love to ask you, Adriana. So
Yes.
the first one is, what does it mean when someone supports you as a small business owner to you?
Oh, for me is I love the referrals. It's funny, a lot of people usually ask, like, where do you get your people from, right? And when they mean people, is like my clients. And honestly, I get the most clients from therapists.
Mm.
So because I'm from the HR world, I had to study a lot of psychology. So I just end up finding psychologists through this funny journey called life. And they're like, hey, can I refer people to you? I'm like, absolutely. So I'll get an email, like an inquiry form, and then they'll say, so and so referred me. That is my therapist. And I'm like,
Wow.
get the heck out of here. So they go ahead and help with the psychology part. And then I go ahead and help with the money part. Now, we don't work side to side
Right.
because that's a HIPAA violation, right? And that's why I tell them, like, whatever you tell me, like, they're not going to find out. And whatever you tell them, like, I'm never going to find out. You're the one that's starting to create your team of, what's the word I'm trying to look for? Like your team of excellence, I guess,
Yeah.
right? Within your therapist and now a money coach. And maybe you get a trainer, and then maybe you get, I don't know, a dietitian and
Mhm.
a mindset coach or what have you, right? And they refer them over to me because more times than not, especially in the world that we live in and the society that we live in, money is a huge stressor.
Mhm.
So they can take care of the mind, right? The mental part. And I take care of the money management part. And it's worked so well. So I really do think the referrals from other people, which I consider like wonderful professionals because they're well educated, very high emotional intelligence and things like that, is always such a big compliment for me in terms of support, but just any referral in general as well.
I love that. It's true. It makes a big impact.
Yes.
And then my second question is, what advice would you give to Adriana when you first started the financial literacy education? Obviously, you said you're almost 3 years into
Yeah.
this journey. So, what advice would you give yourself back then?
Ooh, that's a good one. The advice I would give her is don't be so shy behind the camera. Like if you go on my social, like I will talk to the camera, no problem now. It took a lot for me to get there. It did. But I started realizing that that's a big form of connection. And it's funny when I'm out. So I'm from the suburbs of Chicago and I go in the city all the time. People always ask me, they're like, what? You live in the suburbs? I thought lived in the city because you're always in the city. I'm like, yes, I'm always there. But no, I'm in the suburbs. And people will just recognize me. And to me, it's still the weirdest thing when people come up to me and they're like, are you Adriana? And then I'm like, yes, like, why? And then they go ahead and tell me. And I always give them a hug. So if you ever see me, like, come up to me and I will give you a big hug. But it's behind the camera. I feel like so many of us are camera shy or very judgmental on ourselves, but it's that practice makes perfect for sure.
Yeah, it's true. You're just still building or still working through things. So it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like you don't think about how much that might
Mm-hmm.
impact your journey at the very
Yeah.
beginning in a good way,
Yeah.
right? Because everybody else is kind of going through something similar or just wants to get to know you and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a first one. I don't think anybody said that yet. So I love that.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your journey and sharing part of your story. And I'm going to leave all of Adriana's links in the description to make sure you connect with her or give her a big hug on the street if you see her.
Yes.
I'm in Chicago, but no, I can't thank you enough. I just really appreciate the conversation. And I think people need to talk about money components in general more. So go follow Adriana, stay informed, and find someone or a community that helps motivate you when it comes to that kind of stuff. So that way you're continuing to like empower yourself, whether it's in your 9 to 5 to help build your side hustle or outside of it.
Oh my gosh, yes, 100%.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you were able to join.
No, thank you so much for having me. I really loved the conversation.